Welcome to Evangelical Focus and also Protestante Digital in Spain. And we are having this conversation today with Ruslan Maliuta, who is serving as a network strategist at OneHope, which is a global ministry that helps children engage with God's story. And he's also involved with the World Evangelical Alliance, and he's a co-founder of the World Without Orphans. So he has much knowledge about children and all that has to do with mission. And he is from Ukraine. So welcome, Ruslan, to this interview.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Daniel.
We wanted to ask you first about your personal situation. How are you doing, you and your family, and as a Ukrainian?
Well, I cannot say that we are doing great, and I'll explain what I mean. And I don't think we will anytime soon, honestly. It's just what's happening now in Ukraine is devastating. It's really hard, regardless of where someone is. But having said that, I should say that I'm grateful because we are safe. We are in safety. I have a large family. My wife and I, we have 5 children, 5 boys from 5-year-old to 18-year-old and in between. And about a month ago, we came to Western Europe, to Switzerland. We have some good friends here. And because as we were thinking and praying, we kind of felt like it would be a good precautionary measure. I was not expecting a big war. It was mainly just, I guess I was thinking that we are overreacting, honestly, and also maybe sensing God wanted us to do something. So we relocated. I work remotely, globally, so I can do it from anywhere. It was also another thing that to do my work in ministry, I need to be connected and I need to be able to travel. So that's how we ended up in Western Europe a month ago, hoping that we will go back to Ukraine after the situation de-escalates. And now I will always remember it, on February 24th, 5 a.m. That's when my oldest son, Max, came into our bedroom and woke us up because he learned it first. And he said that there is a war in Ukraine and Ukraine is being bombed. Of course, it was shock. It was not surprise because, you know the story. But I think it was a shock for 2 reasons. One is because even when you think something like that can happen, when it actually does, it's a different thing. But then seeing the scope of it from the beginning, as you probably know, Russian army bombed cities all over the country. So literally within hours of the start of the war, I come from Western Ukraine. I grew up in a city called Ivano-Frankivsk, one of the larger cities in Western Ukraine. And within first couple of wars, Ivano-Frankivsk airport has been bombed. That I did not anticipate, even in my worst case scenarios. And just seeing this, and then so that's our story. We are still we feel we are blessed because we are in a safe place. We have everything we need, but we are still suffering. Especially emotionally, but we also suffering mainly because we know how much more people in Ukraine, like our friends, as you can imagine, everyone that we know is suffering. Our parents are there. This is actually an emotional day because finally my parents, we all live not far from each other. Used to live at least. Not close to Kiev, in western suburbs of Kiev. And this morning, finally, my parents decided to evacuate. So they are driving, as we speak, they are driving toward Western Ukraine. So I've asked a lot of people to pray, and I'm praying and asking you to pray so they will safely make it to Western Ukraine. There is a place that they can stay there. And then my wife's parents, Ana's parents, decided to stay. So also please pray because the fighting intensifies, but that's their decision. So this is our situation. It's both. I can talk about our personal situation, but it's now inseparable from what our country is going through. But again, I'm grateful that we are safe, but I cannot say that we are glad. I'm grateful, but it's just really hard to see every day destruction, killings, and places that we know. It's many places that you see on the news probably. You remember that big building with a gaping hole in it, one of the first images. That's the building next door to where all my kids were born, to a hospital that like there is a cafeteria that you can actually see on those images where Anya and I would go on dates for many months after our youngest was born. So that's kind of, and of course buildings are much less important than people, but when you see buildings like that, it indicates there are people that have suffered. So anyway, so this is kind of where we
are. Ruslan, as you say, you are still in contact with people in Ukraine. What do they tell you about what they are living now?
It's different stories. So what the common denominator between all those stories is suffering. As I said, I think I can confidently say that I don't think there is a single Ukrainian in the country, or anyone. Like I'm not, basically, I don't think there is a single person in Ukraine who is not suffering in some way, and who is not in distress of some sort. I mean, of course, there is a difference between someone being right in the middle of fighting, or in a place like Kharkiv that has been, bombed with cover missiles for days now, from someone who, let's say, I was just talking with my friend a couple of hours ago in Lviv, which has seen some bombings but is relatively safe. But there is suffering everywhere. So that's kind of what we see. And then children, some impossible decisions, who leaves, who stays, and then because men cannot go across the border because of the mobilization, like do you send, does women go with children, does only children if they're older go? So just a lot of these very hard decisions, and a lot of just basic things like how do we cope with what's going on. I mean, there are places that things are still fairly normal when it operates, like stores are open and communication is there. But then there are, like Mariupol has been, I think, encircled completely today, and it's a city that suffered a lot since the war in Donbass began. And now we have my wife's family, like extended family. There's probably a dozen of relatives that we have in Mariupol, in the city, that never left. So we basically don't know what's happening with them. And so it's all kinds of different stories, but they're joined by this. And then also anxiety and fear, what's going to happen next. Because as you see, this is not subsiding. Putin has clearly said that he wants to destroy Ukraine. He reiterated it, I think, again yesterday with Macron. So this is that kind of war. I mean, it's bad and it's getting worse. But on the other hand, I don't want to just be only see grim side of this. Also, what we are hearing, what we are seeing, is many people doing what they can to help others, and that's what we see also everywhere, and including some of the most difficult. So it's not only people who have relatively sort of more stability, because everyone is in trouble. But there are many Christians, especially many churches, evacuations, helping people on the ground, helping people in, especially all kinds of things. In big cities, there are thousands of people who hide in subways. Kiev has, I think I read somewhere that on a given day, or like on a given moment, there are at least 15,000 people in Kiev metro system just hiding there, even during the day. So helping those people, bringing them food and so on. So I think there is an incredible effort happening in Ukraine by those who are in the country, who are also in danger, but helping others to go through this. And of course, there are now also churches, organizations who are doing it in an organized way. That's part of what I did not anticipate. I've always been in full-time ministry, and there was a long period of time between 2000 and 2012 when I was leading NGOs, doing a lot of NGO work. So what I've been doing this week basically is trying to help rally support outside Ukraine for good organizations and networks that do this work in Ukraine. So I'm very encouraged. Like I have one organization that has 38 receiving centers in 2 regions of Western Ukraine, and they're helping to move, multiple people to move from dangerous zones, and then even many of them they help to move. They also set a system to move people along in Western Europe as they cross the border with Poland and Russia. So it's good to see not just positive response, but a number of Christian groups being able to mobilize themselves and set effective systems. Another group is organizing evacuations of unaccompanied children. That you probably have to stop me at some point because I can go on and on, but
okay.
so feel free to interrupt me. But just so let me just say this: so, like children in state orphanages, I mean, it's very vulnerable. There are areas when we cannot do much because it's now already controlled by Russian army, but there are still many areas when it can happen. So many of them already evacuated, some are being evacuated. So heartbreaking thing that I've seen is that there are families who bring their children to relative safety in Western Ukraine, then go back to fight or support the fight in their hometowns. Like just not regular families, but that's what they decided to do. So this is what we see now happening in Ukraine. There is something, I know you may not ask me this question, but I see also something happening outside Ukraine, but only if you want to know. So let me know if you want me to go there. But I'll pause and let you kind of.
Yeah, you were speaking about children. What is the impact on children of this war? Of course, we see the images of the train stations, and as you mentioned, the separation of families. Those of us who have children, it's difficult to even imagine what's happening. But what is your sense? What is the impact on children? And also, you mentioned the orphanages. I guess there are also Christian orphanages. And how has this been?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of children in general, I don't have to go far. Something that I wish very few parents will have to do in their lifetime is to wake up their children or just come to their children in the morning and tell them that there is war at home. And that's what we had to do a week ago. In different ways, but we had to tell every single one of them. I mean, one of them told us actually, so that tells you that he's grown up. And of course, again, we are in safety, I know, but I'm only saying this to provide a backdrop. Like even my children who are in Switzerland, who have pretty much everything we need now, who have a stable environment, good loving Christian parents. I mean, I hope that we are loving, good loving Christian, at least we try to be. But even they, we can see the angst, we can see the emotional toll because they connect with their, friends on social media. We try to be careful with how much exposure they get, but we don't want to hide it to them. We talk with them. So all this to say is that I think I can also say that every child in Ukraine has been traumatized. The question is only to what extent, or every child connected direct, like we are not in Ukraine, we're connected. So of course there are some horrible cases like children actually dying. I think even 2 days ago I need to get my oldest son actually is helping me to go through, not helping me, he is trying to put together every day an update on what's happening in Ukraine. Not in any major way, but since I connected with a number of Christian networks, I will just send it to them as a way of just letting them know reliable information because he double checks it. So anyway, so it's interesting to see how he does that. And so I need to get an update from him. But a couple of days ago, there were a number 30 children died in the war so far, out of 2,000 adults who died, or 2,000 total number. And I'm sure it's a bigger number as of today because it happens every day. And I know 2 stories, at least in one case in Kharkiv, entire family, 2 parents and 3 children got burned by a missile. They happened to be just like very close to the place where missile hit. In Kiev, even before that, there was also a family, 2 parents, 3 children. They were driving a car and they happened to come across this advance unit. You may have seen this on the news. That's a tactic that Russians do. They send these advance units into the cities. And they just got in, I don't know if it was intentional killing or a crossfire, but the bottom line is 2 parents and one of their daughters got killed and 2 ended up in ER, and I don't know what their fate is. So like that would be the sort of divorce. I think I cannot imagine children being wounded at the same time as both of their parents and a sibling being killed. Like this is almost like as bad as it gets for a child. So I just want to see 2 examples, different examples. But the point here is that there is, bombing. Imagine a child having to go to a shelter every time a siren goes out and stay in there. There are children that spend, 7 nights now, or all the time they spend in basements. So I don't want to kind of just be dramatic, but this is the reality for a country that while we had war in Donbass, so I cannot say that we are completely unfamiliar, but unless someone was in Donbass or was fighting in Donbass, they were just like, I mean, I travel a lot. I mean, we love Europe. They were like you. I mean, like any other family anywhere in, maybe not as, maybe a little bit poorer, you know, so there is a difference, but still, like Kiev was a thriving, I mean, city with lots of middle-class families and professionals and so on. So anyway, so that's what children go through. They all need some kind of help now, but those who are, of course, most vulnerable are orphans, are special needs children. In terms of orphans, I actually spent a lot of years in my work life on that issue. But Ukraine has made a lot of progress in terms of having children in families, not in institutions. But there are still some, including Christians, like you asked, Christian institutions. They mostly don't operate as orphanages, more as a temporary center, like care centers, but full time. So I know that several of those, a couple of those that I know, have evacuated fully. Like one of them is in Germany, another is in Poland. So I think it was good because they usually have already some kind of connections. So I was encouraged to see how quickly some of them, I'm not implying that all of them did, but some of them mobilized within days and were able to move children out of the country even. So yeah, so again, I can keep talking, but just want to make sure that we'll address everything that you need at the moment.
Ruslan, what about the refugees, the people who is living now from Ukraine? Do you have some contact or connection with people who are in Poland or in Romania now?
Yeah, so there are almost like two levels how I'm looking at this. One is just very personal, individual level, because I mean we are in touch with people, and it's happened like literally. Yesterday we were following a good friend of our like families that is our friend. They were in Kiev until recently. They have 3 children. One of them is 11 months old, and they were like still not sure about the fighting. I just want to show you something actually while I'm sharing, just to show you how crazy it is. So yesterday they decided to leave, and they want to go across, like they want to go across the border. So we know that they'll probably get to the border, I think, tomorrow. So we'll see how. So my point is that we have very personal angle of this, and it's unfortunately it's not individual stories. Like I just got an update from my mom where they are. I'm glad to see that they are making progress. So it's that, like, it's so sorry that for me distracting. I mean, because that's life now. Like something is happening, not just kind of out of curiosity, but often something really important in our life is happening like all the time. So what I wanted to show you yesterday early afternoon, my wife got a video on Viber from one of her friends, close friends who still living, like it's basically very close to where we live, and that's the video just from her backyard. And it's not just one. I mean, it's gonna be just only like 10 seconds. You'll see like 2 or 3. This, I mean, and you don't know. Like when it happens, you don't know what that is. It looks awful, but in this case, I think it was actually a Russian jet fighter that got shot down by Ukrainian air defense system. But there were others. So anyway, so this is kind of that's, it could look like everything is okay, but I think everyone I talk now has heard bombings. Like everyone is familiar now with the sound of bombings. But when people begin to see like the impact, or especially when fighting comes, like fighting already came to a number of Kiev suburbs. So anyway, so that's one angle. But another, because I'm connecting now with lots of ministries, and I know and even denominations. I've been talking with Baptist Union, with Pentecostal Union, because they all are now ramping up support and meaning help. So many of them, I would say that the focus in Ukraine is on helping people on the ground who are wherever they are, and helping, of course, internally displaced people. But then it's tricky because it's not tricky. It's kind of when that internally displaced person crosses the border, that's when they become refugee. So, like I said, there are ministries who actually follow the chain. Like they don't stop at the border. They help someone from the moment they start evacuating. Looks like all the way to where they are at least temporarily settled in Western Europe or somewhere in Europe. And then, but then there are many others who are helping refugees outside Ukraine. So yes, I mean, I know churches, I know organizations. Poland has gotten the biggest wave, as you know. You probably know the latest numbers. I think yesterday it was more than 1 million people. So the official number is more than 1 million people, which is unbelievable because it's only been 7 days. And we're already looking at this number, and it certainly will grow. So I would say Poland, again, you probably know this, but just to reiterate, Poland, I'm getting information out that Hungary is the second most, not just by number, but sort of by what's happening there. And Slovakia, of course, Moldova to a large extent. So Christians are trying to mobilize themselves in all of those countries. One example would be this church in Lublin that have been receiving, okay, here's actually a neat story. So this church, Polish church in Lublin, has been receiving refugees from the very beginning of the war, like first days of the war. I think they first received like 60 of them, and they began to look for some help. So just because so we connected them with Christians in Singapore who are raising money for Ukraine. So now we have Christians in Singapore raising, not just them, but so I thought it's kind of an interesting to see it. I personally know everybody, I mean, almost everybody involved in key positions, and it's seeing Christians in Singapore raising money to help Christians in Poland to receive refugees from Ukraine. So that has been very encouraging for me to see in a very tangible way how the body around the world comes together, the body of Christ around the world comes together.
There are many Christians around the world and in Europe who are as you said, looking for ways of giving. And there are many organizations that are channeling aid or financial support. Is there a way to cooperate with OneHope?
Yes, and I would say not just OneHope. So OneHope already started a campaign, and not already started. Yes, as of yesterday. So again, just before you, that's why I was actually distracted. Just before we started the call, I got a confirmation from one of our partners that they got the money. And why I'm excited about this, because in normal life, this is normal. In war zone, I'm really glad that the system we kind of triple checked actually worked. So they have the money, and I now look forward to hear from them that they can use it, because that's another obstacle in the war situation. So a big part of what's happening now is figuring out who is actually doing good work, and there is a lot, but also what is the system to get support to them, and if they can use it. So as of today, like OneHope has, in addition to our team on the ground, that we always had we are helping 4 different groups in Ukraine. Already transfer money for them. World Evangelical Alliance does that too. As you know, I'm part of World Evangelical Alliance team. So in a similar way, there are also some of those are same groups that World Evangelical has been. I've actually been very impressed by how WEA responded to this. Also, already started fundraising, but even before public fundraising started, we are able to send money into Ukraine through World Evangelical Alliance. And that's what I wanted to reiterate. I think at this point, as a sort of first response kind of point, getting money into Ukraine while people there can still use it is probably the most urgent need. I know there are many other ways, but while it still works, because there are already parts of Ukraine that it doesn't, but generally it's still possible. So while it's still possible to buy things there, I think it's very important to equip or support Ukrainian organizations, ministries, churches, individuals, so they can do the work. And I would say equal, and maybe not equally so, but sort of in the same kind of space, is helping those who receive refugees too, like I've shared about church in Poland. So I don't know if, I don't know if and how you do it. I can give you links to both WEA effort, to OneHope effort. So, yeah. But I think what we are prioritizing both with OneHope and WEA are efforts that are done by Ukrainians, and sort of they are led there, and they might have partners abroad like us, but they are basically there. That they don't have, like, it's not offices from abroad in Ukraine, it's national, local organizations or denominations.
Ruslan, as Christians, we believe that prayer is important. So maybe final question is how we can pray for you and for this situation.
For prayer, I mean, that's actually was something else that I wanted to share, even if I wasn't asked. I'm just blown away by the amount of care and interest and prayer from all over. I know maybe because I've been spending quite a few years now working globally, but one, I've been swamped with messages. I mean, I don't mean in a bad way, but it almost feels like anyone I ever met around the world remember that I'm from Ukraine and send a message. But then also, I've been sharing this very thing. People asking like, what can we be praying for? At probably a dozen of Zoom meetings, varying from Latin America, 200 leaders organized, I think, by Lausanne and Evangelical Alliance, to UK, to India with 60, to a global with like 1,600, probably the biggest Zoom meeting I've ever been to. And there is one in Nigeria coming, and there was one in Brazil last night. So I'm just sharing this, that there is a tremendous outpouring of love and also care. So, and what I do when I go there, I just share what people can be praying for, help them to understand a little bit. I can do it briefly with you. I mentioned already this. I say pray for those who suffer. And I also add now, pray for those who suffer in Russia. I mean, it's not an easy thing for me to say, but I know that a lot of them suffering. It's not an equal situation. I think there's people in Russia suffering in easier ways, but they still suffer. So praying for those who suffer in Ukraine, in Russia, and others impacted by this. Then praying for those who help others. And the third is praying for a miracle for Ukraine, because I believe that while all odds are against Ukraine, it looks like it's really, I mean, it is really bad, and it looks like it's probably going to get worse. I have a growing hope, and it's not based on anything reasonable, but it's just based on, I don't know, sense. I have growing hope that God will lead Ukraine through this immense challenge, and Ukraine will emerge out of this stronger, with more freedom, with more gospel being preached, and with not only in Ukraine but beyond. So that's the essence of what I'm asking people to pray for.
Thank you, Ruslan. Thank you for this time with us. Thank you for sharing your views, also information, but also these prayer requests. For, as you say, there are many around the world following the situation, and we will continue to report both in Evangelical Focus and Protestante Digital. Thank you very much.
Can I mention one just briefly, one other thing? And again, I'm biased, but I'll still say this. One thing that I'm concerned about, and I can go on record with this. When I hear people just saying, let's pray for peace between Russia and Ukraine, let's pray. So I understand the sentiment. But I'll just go straight to analogy, and I'm sorry if it will be very straightforward. But if someone is walking on the street and sees a very big man trying to rape a young girl, what a good Christian should respond with? Do you respond with praying for them to have good relationships between each other? Do you respond with prayer for peace? Or do you try to do what you can to defend that girl? Or if you can't defend that girl, you pray for her to be defended by some miracle. So that's how I see this situation. And that's, I think, what we should be praying for, and also doing whatever we can. Because I think that at a very macro level, this is what is happening right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, but I just wanted to mention this to you.
Thank you very much, Ruslan,
Thank you.
And for your time, and also for giving these insights that are helpful for our readers.